My neighbor thinks I'm a gardening genius. Last spring, while she was just starting to plant her first seeds, I was already harvesting full-sized onions, pulling up garlic scapes, and cutting fresh greens from beds that looked like they'd been growing for months. She finally asked me, "How do you always have such an early garden? Do you have a greenhouse I don't know about?" I laughed. No greenhouse. I just did 20 minutes of work last November and then completely forgot about my garden until March. She didn't believe me, but it's true. There are 5 vegetables you can plant in fall, cover with mulch, and literally forget about all winter. No watering, no weeding, no checking on them through snowstorms. They sit there dormant while you're inside binge-watching Netflix, and then spring arrives, and boom, you're harvesting while everyone else is just getting started. Welcome to Daily Garden Fix, where we prove that the best gardening is often the laziest gardening. Today, I'm sharing 5 vegetables that practically grow themselves if you plant them this fall. Hit subscribe, and let's talk about working smarter, not harder. Vegetable 1. Garlic. Let me tell you why garlic is the ultimate lazy gardener's dream. You plant it once, literally once, in October, and then you don't touch it, look at it, or think about it for 8 months. No other vegetable is this forgiving, this low maintenance, or this rewarding. I'll never forget my first garlic planting. It was late November, already getting dark by 5 p.m. and cold enough that I could see my breath. I was tired from work and honestly considered just waiting until spring to plant anything. But I'd bought seed garlic weeks earlier and kept seeing it on my counter, so I forced myself outside. I spent maybe 15 minutes total, broke apart the bulb into individual cloves, poked holes in the soil with my finger, dropped in the cloves pointy end up, covered them, spread some straw on top, done. I went back inside, made tea, and basically forgot I'd planted anything. All winter, through November rains, December snow, January ice storms, those garlic cloves sat buried in frozen ground. I never once went outside to check on them. Honestly, by February, I'd pretty much forgotten they existed. Then March arrived. One morning, I glanced out my kitchen window and saw these bright green shoots poking through the mulch. My garlic was growing without me doing a single thing. No watering, winter rain handled it. No fertilizing, the soil had what it needed. No pest control, nothing bothers dormant garlic in winter. By late June, I harvested more garlic than I'd grown in my entire life. Full-sized, beautiful bulbs with papery wrappers in that intense, complex flavor you can't get from supermarket garlic. My 15 minutes of work in October gave me a year's supply of garlic. The actual planting process is so simple it almost feels like cheating. Choose any sunny spot with decent drainage. Garlic isn't picky. Break apart your seed garlic into individual cloves, poke holes in the soil with your finger, drop in the cloves pointy end up, cover them, spread some straw on top. Done. I went back inside, made tea, and basically forgot I'd planted anything. The mulch is your secret weapon. It insulates against temperature swings, prevents the freeze-thaw cycles that can push clothes out of the ground, suppresses weeds, and keeps moisture consistent. By spring, it's partially broken down and adding organic matter to your soil. In early spring, you might pull back some of the mulch so shoots can emerge easily, but honestly, I've had years where I didn't even do that and the garlic pushed through just fine. The only real work is harvesting. When the lower leaves turn brown in summer, you pull up the plants and hang them to cure. That's it. 20 minutes of work in October for months of garlic. If you only try one thing from this video, make it garlic. Vegetable 2. Multiplier onions. The onion that plants itself year after year. Most people know about regular onions, but let me introduce you to a vegetable that's even easier. Multiplier onions, also called potato onions or shallots. These are the set-it-and-forget-it champions of the fall garden. I discovered multiplier onions by accident. 4 years ago, my elderly neighbor was dividing bulbs in her garden in November. "What are those?" I asked. She said, "Multiplier onions. Been growing in this spot for 20 years. I just harvest some and leave some every year, and they keep coming back." She handed me 3 bulbs. "Plant this before it freezes. You'll thank me in spring." I took them home, pushed them into the soil in a corner of my raised bed, and honestly forgot about them. Winter happened, spring arrived, and suddenly I had a clump of onions growing where I'd planted those 3 bulbs. By June, when I pulled them up, those 3 bulbs had multiplied into 12. I harvested 8 for cooking and replanted 4. The following year, those 4 became 16. I harvested 12 and replanted 4 again. It's now 4 years later, and I haven't bought onions at a grocery store since that day my neighbor gave me 3 bulbs. They just keep multiplying year after year with 0 work from me. Unlike regular onions that grow 1 bulb per seed, multiplier onions divide underground. You plant 1 bulb in fall and it splits into 4 to 8 smaller bulbs by harvest time. Each of those bulbs can be eaten or replanted. It's like having a permanent onion factory in your garden. They're also incredibly cold hardy. Regular onions can be iffy in harsh winters, but multiplier onions laugh at cold. They're bred to overwinter, so temperatures that would kill other crops just send them into dormancy until spring. And here's the best part. They mature early. While spring-planted onions are still forming bulbs in July, your fall-planted multiplier onions are ready to harvest in May or early June. You're eating fresh onions when everyone else is just getting started. Plant multiplier onion bulbs in November or early December before the ground freezes hard. Choose a sunny spot. Onions love sun. Push each bulb into the soil so the top is just barely showing, about 6 inches apart. Cover with about an inch of soil, water if it's dry. Add a light layer of mulch, maybe 2 inches. Done. You won't touch them again until spring. No watering, no weeding, no checking on them through snowstorms. They sit there dormant while you're inside binge-watching Netflix, and then spring arrives and boom, you're harvesting while everyone else is just getting started. Vegetable 3. Winter spinach. Most people think spinach is a spring crop. They're missing out on the easiest harvest window. Fall-planted, winter-hardy spinach that sits in your garden all winter and gives you fresh greens when you need them most. I started growing winter spinach 3 years ago after reading about it in an old gardening book from the 1940s. The author casually mentioned planting spinach in November and harvesting through winter whenever the ground thawed enough to get a travel in. I was skeptical. This is Pennsylvania, not California. We get snow, lots of it. But I tried it. Late November, I scattered spinach seeds in a raised bed, covered them lightly with soil, watered them in, and waited. Within 2 weeks, I had seedlings. By mid-December, before the first hard freeze, they'd grown into small rosettes of dark green leaves. Then winter hit. Temperatures dropped into the teens. Snow covered everything. My spinach disappeared under 6 inches of powder. I assumed they were dead and mentally wrote off the experiment. But in January, during a warm spell, I brushed snow off the bed just out of curiosity. And there they were, green, healthy spinach leaves, slightly flattened by snow, but very much alive. I picked a handful, brought them inside, and made a salad. The flavor was incredible, sweeter and more complex than any summer spinach I'd grown. The cold actually improves the taste by converting starches to sugars. I harvested spinach all winter, whenever temperatures rose above freezing. By March, those same plants that had survived months of snow and cold were growing vigorously, and I was harvesting big handfuls for weeks before they finally bolted in late April. Why winter-planted spinach works. Spinach is incredibly cold hardy. Mature plants can survive temperatures down to 15 degrees or even lower. When you plant in fall, the plants establish before winter, go semi-dormant during the coldest months, and then wake up the instant conditions improve. The key is planting early enough that seedlings are established before hard freezes, ideally by mid to late November in cold climates, as late as mid-December in milder zones. Once established, they're virtually indestructible. How to plant winter spinach? Choose a spot that gets good sun in winter. A south-facing bed is ideal. Broadcast spinach seeds fairly thickly, about an inch apart. Cover with a 1/4 inch of soil. Water gently. Once seedlings emerge and get a few inches tall, you can mulch lightly around them with straw for extra protection, but it's not required. Then forget about them. Let winter do its thing. The plants will slow down or stop growing during the coldest months, but they won't die. When you get winter thaws or sunny days, you can harvest leaves anytime the ground isn't frozen solid.
Vegetable 4. Fava beans. Here's a vegetable most American gardeners have never heard of, but it's the ultimate fall and forget crop. Fava beans, also called broad beans. These are large, hardy beans that you plant in fall, ignore all winter, and harvest in early spring when they're one of the first fresh vegetables of the season. I discovered fava beans 5 years ago at a community garden. It was November and I was closing up my plot for winter, pulling out dead plants and cleaning up. My neighbor in the next plot was actively planting, pushing large seeds into trenches and covering them. "What are you planting?" I asked, confused. "Everything's dying. Why are you starting something now?" "Fava beans," he said. "Plant them now, they'll sit dormant all winter, and I'll be harvesting beans in April while you're still starting tomato seeds indoors." He was from Italy, where fall-planted favas are completely normal. In America, almost nobody knows about them. He gave me a handful of seeds, I planted them in a row, covered them, and walked away skeptically. Winter came. Cold, snowy, harsh. I assumed those seeds rotted in the frozen ground. But in March, as snow melted, I saw these thick, sturdy stems emerging from the soil. By April, I had knee-high plants covered in beautiful black and white flowers that smelled like honey. By May, I was picking tender green beans while my neighbor's bush beans hadn't even been planted yet. The taste blew my mind. Favas have this rich, nutty, buttery flavor that's nothing like regular green beans. They're substantial, more like a meal than a side dish. I've planted them every fall since. Fava beans are unique. They actually need cold weather to germinate and grow properly. They're native to the Mediterranean and Middle East, where they're traditionally planted in fall and harvested in spring. If you try planting them in spring, they struggle in warming weather and often fail before producing beans. Fall planting lets them germinate in cool soil, establish slowly through winter, and then grow vigorously in early spring when temperatures are perfect for them, cool and moist. By the time summer heat arrives, you've already harvested and pulled them out. They're also nitrogen fixers, meaning they actually improve your soil while growing. Their roots host bacteria that pull nitrogen from the air and convert it into fertilizer for other plants. After you harvest favas, your soil is richer than before you planted them. How to plant favas and forget them. Plant fava bean seeds in November or December before the ground freezes. Make a trench about 2 inches deep, place seeds 6 inches apart, cover with soil. Water if it's dry. That's it. You don't need to mulch them. In fact, heavy mulch can delay emergence in spring. You don't need to fertilize. They make their own. You don't need to water through winter. Precipitation handles it. The seeds will either germinate in fall and form small plants before winter. This happens in milder climates. Or they'll wait dormant in the soil until spring in colder zones. Either way works. Once spring arrives, growth is fast and vigorous. In late April or May, you'll see pods forming. Harvest them when the pods are plump and green, but before they turn leathery. Shell the beans from the pods. Each pod contains 3 to 6 large beans. You can eat them fresh, blanch and freeze them, or dry them for storage. The plants grow 3 to 4 feet tall and might need staking if you get strong spring winds, but that's literally the only maintenance they require. After harvest, cut the plants at soil level and leave the roots in the ground to decompose. That's free nitrogen for your next crop. Vegetable 5. Carrots. Last on our list, but maybe the most surprising. Carrots. Yes, you can plant carrots in fall, leave them in the ground all winter, and harvest them fresh whenever you want. And here's the bonus. Winter-grown carrots are dramatically sweeter than summer carrots. I learned this from an old farmer at my local market who always had the sweetest carrots I'd ever tasted. When I asked a secret, he laughed. "No secret. I just plant them in August or September, leave them in the ground through winter, and dig them up as I need. The cold converts their starches to sugar as a natural antifreeze. Makes them taste like candy." I tried that very fall. Late August, I planted a bed of carrot seeds. I used Danvers because they're reliable. They germinated in the still warm late summer soil and grew through September and early November. By late November, before hard freezes, I had small but developing carrots. Then, winter hit. I covered the bed with about 6 inches of straw mulch to keep the ground from freezing fully solid. That's the only real trick. Through December and January, those carrots sat in the cold ground, not growing, but not dying either. In March, I was craving fresh vegetables. I went out with a trowel, dug through the straw and soil, and pulled up a carrot. They were perfect. not huge, but good-sized. I brushed off the dirt, took them inside, and ate one raw while still standing in my kitchen. I almost cried. That carrot was so sweet, so crisp, so flavorful that it tasted more like fruit than vegetable. All winter long, I harvested carrots as needed, and every single one was the best carrot I'd ever eaten. When temperatures drop, carrots undergo a physiological change. They convert their stored starches into sugar as a natural antifreeze to prevent their cells from rupturing. This survival mechanism dramatically improves flavor. Winter carrots can be 30 to 40% sweeter than summer carrots. They also develop a different texture, denser, crisper, more satisfying. And because they're stored in the perfect root cellar, your actual garden, they stay fresh indefinitely. No refrigerator needed. You just harvest what you need when you need it. The key is timing. You want carrots to be at least half grown before hard freezes arrive. In most climates, this means planting in August or early September. Choose a spot with loose, rock-free soil. Carrots need depth. Scatter seeds in rows or broadcast them in wide bands. Cover with a 1/4 inch of soil. Water regularly until germination. Thin seedlings to 2 inches apart once they're growing. By late November or early December, before the ground freezes, mulch heavily with straw, leaves, or similar material, at least 6 inches deep. This keeps the ground from freezing completely solid, so you can still dig carrots throughout winter. That's it. The carrots will stop growing in cold weather, but won't die. They're just sitting there, getting sweeter by the day. Anytime you want fresh carrots, go outside with a digging fork or trowel, dig through the mulch, feel around for carrot tops, pull up what you need, replace the mulch. Done. This works even in snow. I've dug carrots in January through a foot of snow. You just brush away snow, dig through mulch and soil, and there's your carrot. The only deadline is spring. Once temperatures warm and carrots break dormancy, they'll start growing again, and they might bolt and become woody. So plan to harvest all remaining carrots by early April in most climates. Best varieties for winter storage. Danvers is classic and cold hardy. Bolero resists cracking in wet winter soil. Napoli is fast maturing, so it sizes up before winter. Yellowstone is a yellow variety that's super sweet after cold. I now plant carrots every August specifically for winter harvest. It's become my favorite fall tradition because those sweet, crisp carrots in February are worth more than gold. Why this works so well? Let me step back and explain why these 5 vegetables are so successful as plant and forget crops, because understanding the science makes you a better gardener. All 5 of these vegetables evolved in cool climates or have been bred for centuries to handle cold. Garlic originated in Central Asia. Multiplier onions were grown in Northern Europe for generations. Spinach comes from ancient Persia. Fava beans are Mediterranean. Carrots are European. These aren't tropical plants that need coddling. They're built for cold. Instead of fighting winter, these crops use it. Garlic needs cold to form bulbs. Fava beans need cold to germinate properly. Carrots use cold to enhance flavor. They're not just surviving winter, they're thriving because of it. Winter is naturally wet in most climates. These crops don't need supplemental water. Winter means no pests and no weeds. These crops don't need pest management or weeding. Winter means dormancy. These crops don't need fertilizer or constant attention. They're using resources that are already there: rain, snow, cold, dormancy, and converting them into food with minimal input from you. Modern gardening culture emphasizes instant results. Start seeds indoors under lights, use quick-growing varieties, push for early harvests. But these 5 vegetables teach a different lesson. Sometimes the best results come from doing the work once and then waiting. You plant garlic in October and wait 8 months. You plant carrots in August and wait 6 months. That patience is rewarded with superior flavor, earlier harvests, and better storage quality than any rushed spring crop can deliver. You know what I love most about fall planting? It's the ultimate act of faith in a season when everything looks like it's dying. November and December can feel sad for gardeners. Flowers are gone, leaves are falling, frost is killing everything green and alive. It's so tempting to just close the shed door, clean your tools, and wait for spring. But when you plant these 5 vegetables in fall, you're saying, I believe in tomorrow. I believe in cycles I can't see. I believe that dormancy isn't death, it's preparation. Those garlic cloves sitting frozen under snow, they're alive, waiting, preparing for their moment. Those carrot roots storing sugar in cold soil, they're improving, getting ready for spring harvest. Those fava bean seeds lying dormant, they're gathering strength for the explosion of growth that's coming. And you did almost nothing. 20 minutes in November gave you all of that. That's the secret to sustainable gardening. It's not about working harder or buying more stuff or using complicated techniques. It's about understanding what plants actually need and letting nature do most of the work. These 5 vegetables don't need you hovering over them, checking them daily, adjusting conditions. They need you to plant them, trust them,